Howfit everybody, welcome to the after party. I'm Sabrina Salas Matanane, and in for Chris Barnett, who's at another party, his daughter Sam's birthday party, is Jason Salas.
Howfit and hello everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. Now I know what it's like to sit on the brand new ottoman. I'm excited because the episode we just had for D18 tonight, the first time we've ever taken a look at any other race besides senatorial, very, very enlightening.
Right, we had the candidates for the Attorney General on D18 tonight, and we have our guests that are with us this evening.
Absolutely, to properly critique, dissect, maybe give praise, shine a little perspective from their professional standpoint on exactly how the AG candidates did. We have, of course, let's see, Frank Ishizaki. Let me try and go down your LinkedIn profile off the top of my head. Former FBI, former chief of police, former Guam senator, very, very esteemed member of our community, obviously very well versed in law enforcement and the development and implementation of public policy. So we're very happy to have you here, Chief.
Well, thank you.
All right. Also, a good friend of ours, Attorney Leslie Travis, been practicing law in Guam for some time now.
Yes, we won't say how long.
Well, you have a very good reputation. I know a lot of people say you are the most professional, and you're very, very good at what you do. So your insight on this discussion is greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. And of course, the man who truly needs no introduction, but a very, very esteemed lawyer in his own right, Attorney Curtis Van de Veld. Curtis, very nice to work with you.
Thank you.
All right.
I haven't seen Curtis in so long, so it's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
And I've been on the air for a while. This is our first time working together, so this is a treat for me as well.
Thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and start it off, and your general thoughts on how you thought the candidates did tonight.
I think all of the candidates are good people, and they aspire to try to do good things. But there are some issues that the Attorney General's office faces that I think need to be addressed, such as they have always ended up in conflict with agencies, line agencies within the government in litigation, and there presently is a case that started under former Attorney General Lenny Rapadas. It is now under Attorney General Elizabeth Baird Anderson, in which she's in a fight with the governor's office and Department of Revenue and Taxation about who owes what responsibility to represent who and who has to pay for it. And these are all internal squabbles within the government, and its multi-personalities that really doesn't benefit the people of Guam. It wastes tremendous resources. It delays justice for the people, and I don't think that these problems are being addressed by any of the three, and I think it's something which they need to think about and decide. Also, our criminal justice system moves at times at a snail's pace, and then when it does start to move, it appears to me that the Attorney General's office always wants to exact the harshest sentence or possible sentence against people. And we have an overcrowded prison, particularly the female side, because the female facility was not built for the purpose of holding people into this time. And so women in the facility are treated much worse than men in the facility. So that's a problem that needs to be addressed and thought about, because our responsibility as a community is that if we're going to take away people's liberty and we're going to become their custodian, we better be fair about how we do that. If we don't do it in a fair manner, it is ultimately reflected upon by the people, and it gives them distrust to government. They feel that government is abusive. Government doesn't need to be abusive. It needs to be practical. It needs to resolve what are problems, those that are criminal, but to do it in a manner which promotes a better future for our community.
Try and change that narrative of government being big brother.
Not just punishing people. Well, not just punishing people and warehousing them. There are times when people commit heinous, violent acts that you need to remove them from society. because they are just a parasite to the community. But you don't have to treat every class of crime in that same manner. And it seems that that is the pervasive attitude in the Attorney General's Office Criminal Division. So I think that there needs to be some significant structural changes, and the Attorney General's Office needs to cooperate, I think, more with the administration than it maybe has in the past. And I think these are some issues that I would like to hear the candidates address.
So that having been said, do you think that any of the three candidates we featured tonight address those concerns in an appropriate and effective manner? It wasn't necessarily brought up directly like that as you just did, but do you think anybody touched on it?
The only thing that I think actually did touch on that was when Attorney Gumatau said that we need an Attorney General's office which is more people-centric. But to be fair to Doug Moylan and Levin Camacho, I think that the question really needs to be posited to them directly so that they all get an opportunity to reflect upon the circumstances and then state what they believe, using their personal judgment, is the best way of addressing those issues. I think oftentimes the issues just don't, maybe because the system is so misunderstood, the questions don't actually come to the attention of the voters to ask them in the form that might help facilitate that conversation.
You talked just a little bit about waste of government resources, and there was something that Attorney Gumatau mentioned about one of his priorities, one of his ideas was to cut the AG's office budget by 10%. And even Doug kind of mentioned that, when he was Attorney General, he had X amount of employees, and currently there are 50 more, employees there, and these, they're still not, it's still not enough, or still not doing the same amount of work. Do you agree with what he said, that we should cut the AG's budget by 10%, and that they're currently not doing their jobs?
Currently not, or underperforming. Probably.
Yeah, they're underperforming. Yeah.
I think it should be looked at. But I wanted to go back to what Curtis was saying. The elected Attorney General perhaps made a mistake. Maybe he should have been an elected prosecutor, because what's missing is there's a gap between the Attorney General and serving the government of Guam. And maybe an independent prosecutor is more appropriate, and maybe that was a big mistake.
Well, unfortunately, it's like with the police commissioner. The legislature passes laws, to have a police commissioner, the police commission, and yet decades go by and nothing really happens. And I do agree that the initial impetus for the elected Attorney General was because of the belief that there was a need for a separate prosecutor. And I think that, as you said, the problem is that maybe because of the elective office issue, these problems that come up between the executive in civil issues and giving advice from the solicitor's perspective become now more problematic, because you have two elected officials butting heads with one another. That is unnecessary if there was just an elected prosecutor. And I believe that at the time of the last election of Attorney General Elizabeth Baird Anderson was suggesting that maybe the elective Attorney General was unnecessary and it should go back to being an appointed Attorney General. I don't know that there's necessarily a cure-all answer. But I do know that in living in Guam for almost 30 years, we keep seeing a repeat of the same problems over and over and over again, to the point that the public feels frustrated because there are no real solutions that are created. They're not created in the legislature, even though there are well-intended people there. They're not created within the systems of the executive branch, and now this quasi-fourth branch of government of the Attorney General. And I think that there has to be rationality applied to things other than just politics. But unfortunately, politics seems to rule the day and not good judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, Curtis, you mentioned the police commission. There was never a police commission created. It was a police review commission, and that was just totally flawed. There were too many things that had to be done to make it work. And a police review commission is quite different from a police commission.
In any event, the problem is that you still have the statutes for that existing on the books, requiring that certain people be appointed. There is a police commissioner, and yet, despite the fact that that has existed some 20 years, it's never been performed. It's much like the Ancestral Lands Commission. It's been in existence for over 20 years and has never paid out one penny to the beneficiaries. When does the government actually start to fulfill what it says is its goals and objectives? And if the Attorney General's office was really designed to assure compliance with the laws, to focus on those things, to advise about where there are laws that simply aren't being performed and either repeal them or do something about it, I think that would be helpful. The last person that really had a good eye on the changes in the law and did a good job of advising the legislature and the executive branch was Charles Troutman. And when Charlie got older and was losing his vision, he slowed down in his abilities to do that. But he was a very important part to the proper functioning of the Attorney General's office. Not having him anymore is a significant loss to the community.
Leslie, I'm curious about your thoughts on what seems to be like, this initial theme that we have going here is maybe the evolution of the Office of the Attorney General within the context of GovGuam.
I actually feel that most of the viewers' questions, and I think probably the community at large, doesn't really, to them a lot of these concepts are kind of abstract. It doesn't affect their bottom line. They don't see these issues. They're being worked on. It's like a pie in the sky issue that I think it is important for an Attorney General to be addressing those themes. But I think all three candidates today and in the previous forum and in general in their advertising, they all seem to be focused on issues that the community, does see, issues that they do feel, child support, crime. I think that that's a good call for all three candidates. They all have vastly different approaches. As criminal defense attorney, Curtis and I are both on the CJA panel for district court, and I believe Doug and Levin are also on the court-appointed panel at Superior Court of Guam. So all of us have done a significant amount of criminal defense work. We see, what Curtis was saying, the overcrowded system, the sometimes unreasonable actions by the prosecutor's office. There are a lot of, I think, real practical questions that need to be answered. It's great to have these kind of abstract concepts. Everyone wants justice. Everyone wants wants to be a people person. They want to serve the community. That's
and it plays well as a political candidate.
It does, but what we really need are, kind of concrete solutions. And Frank saying, well, I'm going to cut it by 10%. Well, where? What is the 10% that you're cutting? Part of the issue that I've experienced at the prosecution's office, I don't know, maybe Curtis has had the same experiences, a lot of our prosecutors are imported. They're only here for a short period of time and then they leave.
Yeah.
Under law, they're required to take the bar exam after 5 years, and most of them don't. As long as they're licensed in another jurisdiction, they can practice law here if they work for the government in some capacity.
Now,
So,
do you think with the insertion of a new Attorney General with one of those three gentlemen we featured tonight, will there be a mass restaffing? Because the prosecutors and the investigators, that's a position that's pretty much, you're generally safe, right?
right, but I mean, it's what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the time we don't have institutional memory at these at these offices. We don't have people with, X amount of experience. So the turnover, unfortunately, has resulted in lack of uniformity in the way that the cases are handled, lack of uniformity in the plea agreements that we get, the plea offers that we get. It's not unusual for me to get, a 1.5-year offer from this person and an 8-year offer from this person for the exact same crime. And that's crazy. Another thing that personally really irks me, I mean, it's only come to mind because of the AG forum on Monday, is the way that we treat, other kind of minorities within the community on Guam. Our Micronesian population, for example, there's been a lot of talk of, let's get them out of here, let's deport them. But one of the things that no one is talking about is the fact that oftentimes prosecutors overcharge these cases. They charge these people with deportable offenses, and inevitably they have to plead guilty to something that is not a deportable offense rather than risk going to trial and losing on a deportable offense. So, Chasen, you're a U.S. citizen, correct? So you might roll the dice on a trial that you think they can't prove you guilty for. If you're Chukis, you might think twice about that. Even if you think you might win at trial, the risk is too great. You have a wife here, you have children here, you don't want to be forced to leave Guam, so you plead guilty to something. Maybe even if you genuinely believe they don't have the evidence against you, you plead guilty to a simple assault because you know it's not a deportable offense. So I think that the numbers are skewed. Already, as it is right now, DOC is populated primarily by Chamorros, which makes sense because that's what the community is composed of. But the second largest population there is Chukis, and I think that those numbers are skewed because we don't know why there are more Chukis, than Filipino in DOC. What we do know is that a lot of them are not U.S. citizen. A lot of them don't speak English. A lot of them, are marginalized. They don't even have passive ability to understand some of their rights, like the right to remain silent. Everyone absorbs that from watching Law and Order. Well, your standard person who comes to Guam from Chuk doesn't understand that. These are abstract concepts. They believe if they cooperate with the police, everything will be okay. That's what they're supposed to do. Their rights are not protected. And I feel as though the Attorney General's office, whoever occupies that office, needs to understand that islanders, these Micronesian communities, they're part of our community here. Not only are they, sometimes criminal defendants, sure, but they're also victims of crime. They're also people who need services. And you need to protect these communities as much as you do other communities on Guam. And I feel that some of the candidates have been really unfair in the way that they characterize some of these communities. And if I'm a member of one of those communities, I'm afraid of going to the police. I'm afraid of going to the AG's office.
Did I hear that correctly, that one of Doug's priorities was deportation of immigrants?
And let's talk for a second about the fact that that's not a function of the AG's office. ICE is the one who determines whether or not to deport people, right? It's a federal statute. That's what, immigration statute, immigration code, for better or for worse, is immovable.
Is that because it would be like the path of least resistance? Or, just because it again, like it may play better, it's good for PR, or,
Well,
I hate to frame it in those terms, but, is it a tactical thing, or, does it save money?
I have no idea, but I think that the public doesn't necessarily, get a real sense from these candidates of what the limitations are of the AG's office. It's great to say that, I'm going to do all these things. Well, in practical terms, what exactly are you capable of doing? You can't deport. You can't deport someone who's been convicted of these crimes.
It's a cost-shifting issue. Rather than being responsible for the people within our community, we want to be able to export them in order to avoid the costs of really remedying the problems that are created. And at one point it was the Filipino community, and now the focus seems to be on the Chukis community. And most certainly the people do get themselves into trouble, but is destroying families, which is largely what happens when people are deported, really the solution to the problems? It seems that the laws seem seem to be tending to become more vengeful. We're promoting concepts of vengeance rather than concepts of justice. And we don't seem to be focused on the rehabilitation side. The family violence law was designed to get people promptly into counseling, but as our earlier discussion took place, Mr. Ishizaki is absolutely correct. We lack the financial resources and the personnel resources to help deal with those issues. But when we keep people apart and we prosecute people on a long-term basis for family violence, we don't help to heal the family. We help to destroy the family. We're pulling people apart because we're putting them at constant adversarial roles. And that doesn't serve the interests of our community or the families that are being touched upon by the law. And so it really needs to be that the overall concept of prosecution, there has always been this idea that prosecutors have discretion. But that discretion has not been being exercised, and it certainly has not been being exercised in a way that is promoting the interests of our community for the long run.
We do have some feedback right now from Lisa Natividad. Lisa was saying great info on that, and she said she appreciates you actually bringing up racial profiling and established inequities as far as, like the way different minorities are treated. So the fact that you brought that up is drawing some really good conversation right now on Facebook. Chief, I wanted to ask you something. Because of your previous role in GPD, you were, we would use the moniker, Frank Ishizaki is Guam's top cop by virtue of the office you held. And just like the chief of police now, you still technically are a police officer, but you're not exactly a patrolman, right?
That's right.
When you're the attorney general, sure, you can argue cases, and you are the face and the voice very often of the agency, but you've still got to manage a very large amount of people, and you can't exactly, argue every single case and, file every brief and, do research on your own. Talk about what the three candidates tonight, how they impressed upon you as far as being able to lead the agency as well as, do all the public-facing functions that they have to do.
They have a tough job before them. And right now they're just playing politics, trying to impress us to get the vote and the support.
It's marketing right now.
It's marketing,
No.
but it's a tough job. I mean, look at how many AGs have gotten reelected. Nobody's been reelected.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough job. And Barrett Anderson, she started out good, but I think she decided not to run again. And I think if she ran, she probably had a good chance of getting reelected. So there's something going on, something inherently very difficult and probably very frustrating as being head of the Attorney General's office. And they can't prosecute. I mean, they got a large responsibility. And beyond prosecution, they got other duties. The solicitor job, defending the government against lawsuits. There are other consumer protection. There's so many responsibilities. And the easy one to do is, I'm going to prosecute this case. Heck, they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to hire good people. The AG's office is challenged. I don't think we pay them enough. And instead of having more people, we should trim the number of people probably, because you looked at the numbers, and pay them more so that you can retain, seasoned veteran prosecutors, seasoned veteran attorneys.
Because I was going to say, like, what kind of stood out to me, and Sabrina and I covered these stories, 8-9 years ago, was the counter argument is going to be, okay, well, we can trim off the top, but then we're, 6 months down the road, we're going to say we're getting a lot of bad pushback from the community saying, why isn't my case being handled in a more expedient manner? And they say, well, our caseload is such, and we've got so few litigators and investigators that, we just can't get to everything at the same time. So, it's kind of a topsy-turvy. And it is a very,
and the cost of
self-defeating.
litigation to protect the government has gone up. Look at how many private counsel is retained by these autonomous agencies. It's ridiculous. I think we got to empower the AG's office, have them do more things, pay them better salaries so we can retain them.
Well,
This turnaround and losing prosecutors after 3 years or 4 years, that's ridiculous.
You were taking a lot of notes. Did anybody really touch on, what their vision is for running the agency as far as?
Well, I think,
Gary shared with, I want to cut 10% off the top. That was probably the most direct.
Levin was talking about technology,
Yeah.
right? And so
That's
I
right.
thought that's something that you know all about.
And
so.
And he repeated that.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to.
I would think that if you're going to use technology, one of the things to be able to demonstrate fairness would be to show what are the bail conditions in every particular case that's filed, put that on a website, also show the sentence that's imposed on people for the charges that they have, because as Ms. Travis pointed out, there are many times where what one person gets as a sentence for the same exact crime is very more punitive than what another person gets. And to be able to demonstrate that fairness through transparency would be to reflect both the bail conditions, because that is extremely important to people who are put into the system, and then what the ultimate disposition is.
Yeah, you know, the federal court, they have their PACER system where, you know, we're able to go in and track cases, but for the Superior Court, you can't do that. And
I think that they actually have made some strides towards, you know, being a little bit more user-friendly at this, at the, certainly the Supreme Court. I know Justice Torres is one of his pet projects.
Oh, yes.
Technology in
Yeah.
the court. The AG's office could certainly use a refresher when it comes to that, some new technology. Some of it is also, I think, just, you know, managing what they have. I think, you know, the reason why that concept is compelling, you know, I'm an Xennial, I guess, you know, between Generation X and millennials. So I remember.
Is that what they're calling that right now when you're kind of in between?
Yeah, I think you might be in that category as well. You know, sort of we remember times when there wasn't the internet, right? And now we understand like how streamlined it is, how much easier life has gotten, and also like as attorneys, we know that our research has certainly gotten easier and more difficult, because now the judges expect that you're going to find that one
Yeah.
fringe case out in West Virginia that you didn't need to know. Back in the day, you needed to know the greatest hits. So it's made the job easier and more difficult. But I feel like at the Attorney General's office, we haven't quite seen how it makes it easier yet. And Levin, I know, tech has been one of his one of the things he's been kind of advocating for as far as what he intends to do at the Attorney General's office. One of the things that he's raised, and it's so basic, and it's something that, you know, you and I, Jay, certainly, you know, are aware of, get licenses for, you know, for Microsoft Word. I mean, these are some very basic things that without which you can't function as a law office and even as a government agency. And for attorney, you know, for the Attorney General's office, that seems like it should be kind of mandatory.
On the tech front, I would have liked to see, honestly, like a little bit more drill down into specifics. I mean, because, you know, again, you know, I mean, you know, saying tech, that's a great umbrella to put out. I mean, granted, each candidate only had 30 seconds to kind of like lay out their plans, but I want to see, are you talking about specifically technological automation? Are you talking about applying certain things like, you know, like the whole video teleconferencing system that we have now between, you know, the courthouses has done wonders as far as streamlining things, and everybody says that. I would have liked to see specific implementations of technology. You know, can you say this will save taxpayers money and it will also, you know, allow us to move through the caseload, you know, with this equal amount of effectiveness.
Then there's the flip side of whose job are you going to eliminate when you do that? And how difficult is that going to be to implement?
We'll give in to our robot overlords, right?
Right.
We still have to have the practical experience of whether or not it ultimately is a cost savings. It's kind of like the phone system example that Attorney Gumatauta brought up. It used to be that you would call the Attorney General's office and there were two ladies who would answer the phone. They would also receive documents. But you were able to get through and you were able to function and get cases resolved and closed. You could call now. You can get directed through the phone buffer system to an extension, and then you're told this extension's recording device is full, and then you get clicked off. Now, the notion that a government agency would have a mailbox, a voicemail box, to leave a message that's full and you can't, and it doesn't clear, I mean, that is basic, and yet. And it's the most simple form of technology. And if we can't implement that correctly as a society, how are we going to be able to deal with something that's more complex from an IT perspective? I mean,
That comes back to like running the office and being able to, administer and control people and, do
This
stuff
might
like
actually sound like Curtis is being nitpicky or exaggerating, but he's not. Pick up the phone and try to get through to an attorney general, any assistant attorney general today, and you'll find the same result. He's not exaggerating at all.
Well, I want to ask your reaction to one of the questions that were brought up from one of the online viewers, and it was in relation to the gun grabbing incident. We all know that's involving the lieutenant governor.
The elephant was in the room on that one.
Right. I mean, but it was brought up a couple times, and so Levin's response was, you don't want to try this in the media. Doug was basically, we need to know the facts, but Gary was like, we already know the facts, prosecute him, take him to court. What did you think about the reaction? I mean, their response.
My concern is this. We have criminal charges and complaints filed against police officers that go 15, 20 years, never get investigated. When we're looking at calling them as witnesses in a case and we're looking at the possibility of impeaching them while they're on the witness stand, these internal affairs things never get investigated. And I think that the public sees this kind of circumstance involving the lieutenant governor as being indicative of the fact that there is a privileged class and then there's the rest of the people. And I'm not prejudging the lieutenant governor. Personally, I like Lieutenant Governor Tenorio. Have been a friend of his for years. My initial impression was it was the wrong thing to do. Now, does this mean that we have to bring the full brunt of the system to punish him? I think this goes again to something of prosecutorial discretion. And this is really the most basic political possible prosecution that we could see. I think that, on the other hand, the people are frustrated because they're saying, we're not hearing anything about an investigation of this. It's just kind of like sweeping it under the rug, like happens with police officers who violate people's rights, and nothing gets done about it. So, if you want to have the public trust, then you have to promote trust by leading by example and being consistent. And I think that people are frustrated because they're not seeing consistency. So from a political perspective for Attorney Gumatautau, this is a very delicious issue to feast upon. For other candidates, it may be something that they want to try to avoid. I didn't really get a sense of a direct answer, but I do understand the cautious approach. I just think that when you don't have anything that indicates that something actually is still ongoing and that there really is an investigation, it just leads people to believe that we're back to it's them versus us, and that doesn't help.
And Chief, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because you have been very outspoken and you have not minced words in the interviews we've done with you since this story actually broke about how you feel the event should have been handled, but relative to how the three candidates tonight presented themselves and how they would handle it. What is your thought?
Well, I think we got to be fair. The most affluent, the most powerful should be held to the same standard as the least affluent and the least powerful, and that's the American system of justice, and we should follow that. I agree with the thoughts, except for maybe not all the cases are being investigated, but we'll get back to that later. But and I agree with all of them. All of them said that you got to get the facts. You got to get the facts, and I think it'd be foolish to lead off on a charge and just get indictments going just to make a point. You got to get all the facts, but the public has already made some decisions based on what's published by the media, you folks and others, is he did the wrong thing. The Lieutenant Governor of Guam did the wrong thing.
And Leavitt did touch on that, and he said,
Yeah.
what was the phrase he used exactly? We don't prosecute trial by media, and
Right.
kind of like shining light on the whole court of public opinion thing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I thought that was a very good point.
Because that can destroy a case in court, and we certainly don't want to do that. But I think it's important to get the facts, and we go back to basic transparency and accountability as much as you can legally do. And that's what the people want. The people want to know. And so we've always had this yin and yang, the love and hate between the government officials and the media. And there's a right balance that we got to seek all the time. And I think you got to be as accountable and as transparent as you can be, because it hurts government leaders if they're not. If they're perceived to be holding back, if they're perceived to be unjust, unfair, and to totally lack transparency. And from the media perspective, and you can work that balance. If you offer the media stuff, you can develop agreements and respect to where we should go with this, and so that the public is informed, because the right of the public to be informed is very, very important. At the same time, to protect the rights of a defendant,
Right.
and for someone not to be unjustly accused, unjustly charged.
Right, and so the Attorney General, like, whenever we've called them to follow up, it's ongoing investigation. We don't comment on ongoing investigations, so, they kind of just step back. But I'm just wondering, with Gary, he's already, like, we're going to go after him. We all saw the interview. Basically, he's guilty. He should be charged. But you have the other two who are just like, we just need to review the facts, wait and see how this all pans out. So I'm just wondering, because he is running for AG, it's
Gary
already...
is running for office, and it sounds good to be doing that. The other two candidates are probably more balanced, perhaps, in the sense of finding justice.
I think, though, that from your experience, where you have an event, a singular event, involves maybe even up to 10 witnesses, that kind of an investigation can be completed within a couple of days at most. It doesn't take weeks. It doesn't take months. It can be brought to closure very quickly, because that's my experience in the cases that I get as an attorney in defense, is that these investigations complete very quickly. And so when things drag on as they have, it becomes a public trust issue. Can we actually trust the government to fulfill its responsibilities to treat us all equally? And I think that public fervor is a position that Attorney Gumatau is trying to seize upon for his political advantage, but it would be unfair to say that it doesn't actually exist as an issue for the voters, because I believe there are a large number of voters who feel that this is not being handled properly. And months later, when the media says, what's the status of the case, to say that it's an ongoing investigation about what really is a singular event with a limited number of witnesses is just incompatible with their idea of fairness.
Well, maybe to support your point, Curtis, Stephen Blake on Facebook added a comment, what more do you need? It was on video. And then 5 exclamation points. So that's kind of like underscoring that. I mean, it goes a little bit deeper than that, obviously, and, the due diligence process, and, like you said, you have to actually dig in and consider both sides. But, that seems to be the sentiment from a lot of people out there.
The quality of the video wasn't that good. I think there were plenty of witnesses around, and those witnesses should have been deposed, properly interviewed, and I think the initial failure of this is the police department held back, because this is the lieutenant governor. And
Yeah,
so
some of it could just be them trying to dot their I's and cross their T's, because they know that this is going to be something that is going to unravel in a very public way. That being said, I mean, the snickering between defense attorneys is, if any of my clients did this.
How did Guam's legal community kind of, react amongst yourselves, like amongst colleagues and everything when that news broke? Like, what was the general sentiment?
Well, there's a reality that goes into the discretion of whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. You have someone who is running for the top office, and it is not uncommon that prosecutions of individuals like that is deferred by law enforcement authorities, because they feel that somehow you push the case forward, you're going to end up with a tainted jury. You have people who are going to be in the jury who are going to use their political sentiment in evaluating the case rather than exercising true judgment when it goes to trial. And so there has long been a history of delaying and deferring prosecutions against sitting politicians, unless the circumstances are so heinous that you just can't delay it and defer it. But at least have the intestinal fortitude to come out and say that if you're the chief legal officer, and that's why you're doing it. It promotes public trust. When it seems that it is so clear, or it could clearly have been investigated in such a short period of time, and all they're hearing is no comment. You know, it's kind of like the commercial where the guy goes into the doctor and his kid's in the corner, and the kid's telling him, you know, well, we're just going to play hard, give it 110%. You know, we always give it 110%. Doctor asks another question, no comment. You know, it's that kind of joke, and that's kind of how the community sees it. And as attorneys, that's kind of our little banter from time to time.
I'm curious about that because, you know, like, again, within the legal profession, I mean, yours is obviously a very professional industry. You know, it's one based on ethics and it's very collegial. You know, you oppose each other in court and yet you still respect each other's abilities. Maybe to wrap up, because you're attorneys, you know, the two of you and, you know, and Chief, you guys look for nuances and you can appreciate things that average Joes like Sabrina and I, you know, just don't see because we're not in the business and everything. When you are considering an attorney general candidate, what aspects about their platform, about their approach, about their delivery and everything, like, really make an impression on you to earn their vote?
And does experience matter? Because I know that Levin has, 18 years of experience?
I think 13 professional.
13, and then
He's
you
run
have-
his own firm, yeah.
Then Gary was
30,
28
I
or
think.
30,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Doug has done the job before, so
Right,
I mean, I
right.
guess there's merit in that.
Experience can both be a curse and a benefit. You know, what I think I'm concerned about are more of these systemic problems that I brought up much earlier, which is about not representing the line agencies, not fulfilling the responsibilities that the codes have placed upon the Attorney General's office. I'd like to hear more about structurally the changes that they would make. The political answers are, I think, created more for the emotions of the voters. But, you know, I'm kind of a nuts and bolts kind of person, and I'd like to know what nut is going to go on what bolt if they hold office. Right now, that still seems to me to be fuzzy.
Okay.
But there are three individuals who, based on my experience, and I've known them all for some time, they're quality human beings. So it's not the quality of the person, but it's the quality of their future plans. And in that respect, I don't know whether any of us can say we know where that's going to go.
Okay, well, we'll move with each of you as we
Sure.
as we close this. So let me hold your feet to the fire, though, Curtis. On a scale of 1 to 5, we'll do the Netflix rating, right? How would you give each of the candidates in their performance tonight? 5 being best.
Well, I think if you're going to grade them on what was asked of them, they're all at maybe a 3.5. I don't see any of. I didn't really see separation in that regard. There are the more difficult questions, which I don't think they have answered, and that will determine the other percentage between where they're at now and reaching the 5.
All right, Leslie Travis, your thoughts, and then how would you grade each of the candidates?
Well, it's kind of tough to, grade an attorney based on their performance during a short segment like that. Like Curtis said, we know these guys from our practices. I've certainly gone against all 3 of these attorneys, and I've even referred cases to some of them. And when we leave the courthouse, everyone's on good terms, but everyone has different strengths, and I think that that's what's going to appeal to the voters more than anything, is who do they see themselves, who do they see representing them in court at the end of the day.
You got to give me a number, though. How many stars
in
for
terms
each
of
one?
their performance
Yeah.
tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know. Same, I guess.
Okay.
No one really. I don't think that that's necessarily a fair representation of each of their individual abilities.
Okay.
Just that it was such a short period of time that I don't think that we could accurately assess them just based on this one performance. Now, if you ask me overall, long term, based on how I know these individuals and how they've performed in court, that's a whole other issue. And I think if you did a survey of the attorneys on Guam, you'd get a different answer from what you'd get from the community at large.
All right, we might be able to do that. Okay, and then Frank Ishizaki, your thoughts, and hopefully your rating
Okay,
to deviate from the 3.5.
I'll give you a rating. They were all sterile. And why is that? Because you're running for office.
Now that's the chief we know.
Well, that's the experience I learned
And
from
you
being in
know.
the legislature,
Yeah.
that if you become very controversial, you're going to alienate different factions of the community. And if you want to get elected and keep the job, you straddle the fence. Fence straddling is a very successful way to keep your job and get elected. And so it's difficult. They perform well, maybe a 4, because the talking points, they've been practicing this. How many forums have they had? You look at every gubernatorial candidate, every lieutenant governor candidate, every person running for office, when they first start, they're terrible.
And this is what they do. They're masters of making an argument, right?
Yes, but once you get the talking points, you know what the issues are, you develop how to talk about so they're all sounding the same. So whether you buy a Ford or Chevrolet or Toyota, they're pretty much the same. So how do you rate them?
Right.
We're not a rating group, but I think they did well, and I think that no matter who the public votes for, we're going to depend on them to perform a great job. And the job is not hanging out in court. For the Attorney General, they can visit the court, but their job is to lead, to administer, to get the job done, and to look at problems and issues that Mr. Van de Veld pointed out. And those are very tough issues, and they can't solve them because they got to get the support of the governor, they got to go to the legislature, and it takes a lot of work to get the right bill to move that, to fix it, without creating other problems. And so they got a tough job. They sound good because they're running for office.
Well, there will be another opportunity for people to actually hear from the candidates. KUAM, in partnership with the Guam Bar Association, did record the forum that they held on Monday, and we'll be airing it in its entirety this Sunday, the 19th, 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. That's Sundays and Saturday on Docomo TV1 and GTA GNN.
We're also going to have that up on YouTube for you, so if you want to watch on your mobile device or you happen to be away from the island, you'll be able to stream it there as well.
Okay. And that.
If you value democracy, it's important to gather the information so that you can cast an intelligent vote. So I would encourage people to watch.
I would just echo what Curtis just said. With attorneys, with any professional, it's really hard to just kind of go with your gut. Go by their record, go and look them up. I think one of the candidates even said that. Google them, see what their priorities have been, see how they've performed. Ask another lawyer. They're usually pretty forthcoming with their opinions.
All right, I think it's a pretty safe assumption to say just on this couch there's about 15 years of school at least between the 3 of you, and a lot of reading and a lot of really smart people here, and we greatly appreciate once again your insight in making the show the interactive success that it was. So thank you very much, Frank Ishizaki, Leslie Travis, and Curtis Van de Veld. We do appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, D18 tonight, next week's guests are the candidates for the Office of Public Accountability, and then next week, Wednesday, is the Guam Election Commission, the Republican Party Chair, Jerry Crisostomo, and the Democratic Party Chair, Regine Bisco-Lee. But we've got a special treat because the after party, all next week, we've invited the gubernatorial candidates. So starting Monday, we will have Carl Gutierrez and his running mate Fred Berdalio in studio, so you can ask your questions live on Facebook. On Tuesday, I believe we've scheduled Dennis and Dave. Wednesday, we're still trying to fill that. We've reached out to Frank Hogan Jr. and Alicia Linciaco, so we're still waiting for confirmation on whether or not they're going to be appearing.
Charge your devices.
Right.
That one's going to be good.
Thursday, Ray Tenorio and Tony Atta, and then Friday, Lou and Josh will be with us live for the after party. So thank you so much for watching, and make sure to vote.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.